Hi, I'm Nat.
And I'm Guy, and we got the Chinese military parade. Xi Jinping, Putin, and a lot of other world leaders are there, as well as politicians seem to be going missing or leaving the earth over in Germany with the AfD. 7 of their politicians have passed away.
Yeah.
They say it's not suspicious means, but how do 7 politicians lose their lives a week before an election?
Well, seems like it's Mexico almost. Because here that's, normal common news, sadly.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. We're back to our regular format today. We kind of took it easy the other day because we had a few appointments.
Yes.
Okay, let's start with this Chinese parade. And I was looking forward to this because I wanted to see Xi Jinping and how he was looking these days. There was a lot of rumors that they're trying to phase him out of power. It doesn't look like that way to me. He's kind of putting those rumors to rest, but you never know.
So from CNN World, China showcases military strength at parade as Xi stands alongside Putin and Kim Jong-un, if you didn't know which Kim.
Yeah, and if anybody watches Lies Talk, she's probably...
I think you're the only person who watches her.
She's got over 500,000 subscribers now. So she is probably the key component for a lot of news coming out of China. She's been kind of profiling that a lot of the other leadership within the CCP party is trying to displace Xi Jinping and possibly let him keep his presidential role, but kind of take most of his power away from him. That didn't look like the case. China looked strong. The military parade had a lot of new weapons they showcased. Modi was there. Kim Jong-un was there, Putin was there. So all the global South leaders were there and they seemed to be in good spirits.
I don't know how happy that makes the rest of the world.
Well, there's an alternative way of thinking. A lot of people think Trump is trying to break away from the UK and the European banking system, which had a lot of controls over the US, even in the modern context. And that he's actually looking to have the U.S. have a place in a multipolar world.
So Chinese leader Xi Jinping, Russia's Vladimir Putin, and North Korea's Kim Jong-un stood together publicly for the first time at a military parade in Tiananmen Square to commemorate the end of World War II. The event represents a defiant challenge to the U.S.-led world order. In reaction, President Donald Trump accused China, Russia, and North Korea of conspiring against the U.S. The parade showcased hundreds of advanced weapons that featured more than 10,000 troops, revealing China's growing military power under Xi's push to modernize the world's largest standing army.
Yeah, and we have to realize this is written from a Western context, so they're constantly trying to put the global South up against Trump in a lot of contexts and with a lot of released statements that were behind the scenes, kind of from Putin and other negotiations that were going on in Eastern Europe right now. It looks like Donald Trump may be working with the global South, and he has to put out these statements to keep the neocons and the other people that are mongering for war kind of at bay. So he can't really let on what he's wanting to do, but in a financial context, it looks like he's trying to break from the UK, London, and Europe and potentially give the US a place at the table as one of the major hegemonic powers.
And there were a lot of international leaders there.
Well, all the important ones. So, and
everybody else
in the Western sense, leaders don't have much importance because they don't have sovereignty over their own countries. That's why you see the EU constantly voting in alignment. These leaders that are at these countries, this is Russia, they're completely sovereign. China's sovereign, has control over their own destiny. So does India. Europe and especially the UK is really worried about the US, India, Russia, and China because they all make the decisions for themselves and have an internal infrastructure to support that.
But it was even more than that because it's Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Cambodia, Cuba, Indonesia, Iran, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Malaysia, Maldives, Mongolia, Myanmar, Nepal, Pakistan, Republic of Congo, Serbia, Slovakia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, and Zimbabwe.
Yeah, the way the multipolar world's kind of shaping up right now, it looks like you have Russia, China, India, and the United States are your regional hegemonic powers. And the big question is, will Europe even have a seat at the table? And it doesn't really look like it because chess pieces are being moved around the table in such a way, Europe is looking like they're going to have an economic collapse. And their new financial system and their digital currency they're trying to bring in may be sidestepped by the United States, and another offering may be made to these Western countries.
And speaking of, do you have anything else on this?
Yeah, let's go through this. Did it say what new weapons they were showcasing?
I can start looking for that.
Okay, there was 11 new weapons that were previously unknown that China had that they kind of showcased at this military parade. So their technological advancements on the weapons front is pretty substantial here. As well as Russia in the last few days said that they are going to sell massive amounts of oil and natural gas through pipelines they're currently building with China. This is going to take any future energy needs that Europe possibly wants to have with Russia. When they realize that they're going to be paying up the nose for US and Canadian energy because it has to be transported over, they're not going to be they're not able to have a manufacturing base like they did before with cheap Russian oil.
So more than 50,000 spectators gathered to watch military vehicles, missiles, drones, and other weapons roll through Beijing, according to state broadcaster CCTV. China introduced its newest intercontinental ballistic missiles in years, wheeling the massive DF-61 weapons around on mobile platforms. The DF-61 designation was last seen in the 1970s, according to a Germany-based institute. Air defense lasers were displayed, including one large laser that state-run TV said would be mounted on warships. A land version of the weapon was also shown. 2 extra-large undersea drones also debuted at the parade, with images showing them dwarfing nearby soldiers.
Yeah, and you also have to wonder what space weapons they have, because China is becoming a huge rival for controlling space. They're going to decommission the International Space Station in just a few years, and the only country with a permanent space station in space will be the Chinese. So, and the amount of satellites they're launching, other than the United States, you have Russia and China, which are really the big spacefaring nations.
Who has the laser?
Yeah, that's the laser.
I'm reading what it says underneath.
Also, we have to
hypersonic anti-ship ballistic.
Also, we
missiles.
have to remember they are becoming close partners with Russia, and Russia has the most technologically advanced missiles in the world. A lot of people might not know this because the Western media typically doesn't report it on it a lot, but once in a while it slips out. They have an ultra supersonic missile that's faster than any current air defense, meaning they can hit anywhere in the world and it can't be stopped. It's impossible to stop. They've proven this fact in Ukraine by literally saying the target they're going to hit to see if Western powers could stop them, and they could not. So the US does not even have technological advanced missiles to the speed that Russia does right now. I'm sure they're working on catching up at this point, especially after the Ukraine war or during the Ukraine war. They're seeing that is a huge liability.
But do you think, like a lot, like how I always say, how a lot of the things that are made in China are basically like the rest of the things made in China, where, you know, it looks like, and they say it works great and etc., but then it starts breaking down or catches on fire, or it's not what they usually promise.
A lot of it is for show, especially when it comes to their Navy. Their Navy is really a paper tiger, but they have so many ships and they're able to crank these out at such a rate, but they can only actually go 200 miles or kilometers off the coast of China. So they're really meant for regional, local self-defense and possibly to protect freighter ships, things like this. The U.S. obviously has a worldwide naval capacity with nuclear submarines, nuclear aircraft carriers, but a lot of that stuff's becoming dated, especially with drone warfare. Drones are being able to be launched off of boats. You're also having water-based drones. So China has really looked forward to how they can cut costs and what the future of warfare is going to be. The U.S. has invested in a lot of antiquated equipment, I would say, that worked well before the modern decade. I think there's a whole transformation of what's kind of going on in the military right now. The good thing about the U.S. is they do have over $1 trillion they're investing in their military annually. So we'll have to see what happens there. But also, Russia has always made good equipment, and they make solid equipment and very technologically advanced equipment. Russia, as far as space and air, they are at par with the United States on the technological front. So would they be willing to share that with the Chinese? I don't think so. They still look at the Chinese as a potential threat to them, even though they are partners. So they work with them, but they're very hesitant to give any new technologies over to the Chinese.
And with this weird meeting of the minds, to call it that way, I mean, does it mean anything, or are they just all trying to show that, oh, we're all friends, but they're still not?
This is not about we're all friends. These are the BRICS countries. This is the global South. The global South has the majority of the world's population. A lot of the nuclear technology possessed by China and Russia, they're exporting now to Africa, which is huge, which could make Africa a manufacturing power. The United States was trying to give green energy to the Africans, so they could never really manufacture. Green energy just does not supply massive energy on a regular basis to have a manufacturing base out of Africa. So I think the global South will be coming up over the next decade, and you may see a transfer of power. The fact that Donald Trump came in was really a sign to the global South that the United States either wants a place at the table or they're not going to go quietly into the night. Under Biden, it looked like it was going to be a transfer of power, and the new superpower was going to be China. So,
Okay.
oh, also there was a rumor that there was a hot mic between Putin and Xi, and they were talking about living to 150 years old with, they were talking about organ transplant technology, things like this. I'm not sure if that was something placed there by the Western media, but it was unconfirmed. So I didn't want to bring an article up on it, but that was a rumor as well that I found interesting. Okay.
Because yeah, they all look a lot older now from like the mental picture I have of them usually.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting because Xi, I don't know if he would ever really take Taiwan, but the other people that are trying to get power from him within the CCP, the other three big power players, there's four big power players within Chinese politics. The other three don't want a war necessarily with Taiwan, and they don't want to take back Taiwan. They want to do it politically. So we can move on to the next article if you want, though. But of all those leaders, Putin is by far the most savvy.
But now going on to the European Union and what's going on over there.
And I talked about this on my pop culture show, which I usually don't bring politics in, but it popped up and I thought it was a crazy story. I actually misspoke on that. I had read an article before I went on the air that said 4 AFD politicians had died. The article I brought on the air was 6, and now there is a 7th. Just within a few days, there is supposed to be a election next week. So this is very suspicious.
This is from the BBC, and it is from a day ago, but it's the most recent one I could find. Germany's far-right AfD suffers series of candidates passing away ahead of local vote. So it's not like the big elections, but it's still weird that in this small locality, there's so many. As many as 6 candidates for Germany's far-right AfD have passed away in recent weeks ahead of local elections in the big western state of North Rhine-Westphalia. Police have made clear that there is no evidence of foul play in the passings, but it means that new ballots will have to be printed, with some postal voters will have to recast their ballots.
Okay, and this seems like a possible way to rig an election, because a lot of these mail-in votes were already given. They'll disqualify any mail-in votes that voted for a candidate that possibly had passed away. But one of the more liberal candidates that didn't pass away, if they voted for him, possibly it would be a way to count votes, things like this. Also, the EU media has been really quiet about this. This is from the BBC. This is one of the few articles written about this. The independent media is all over this. Mm-hmm. The AfD has been labeled the far-right party. They're being investigated openly by the German government. The German government is really trying to get them out of politics and make it as hard as they can on the AfD. That being said, that being said, 7 candidates passing away on the eve of an election that is absolutely crucial to holding the entire European Union together. What do I mean by that? The entire European Union is centralized around Germany, the German economy. If the German people voted in a far-right party, then a lot of these EU policies may start being shot down. France may need a bailout from the IMF pretty soon. One of their financial ministers came out and said they probably will. France is too big to float from Germany alone, so it's going to be interesting how they fix that. Also, the UK is saying they may need an IMF bailout. If France doesn't get a bailout from the IMF, they're going to be going to the EU. All the finances, all the global governance for the EU goes through Germany. So if Germany falls apart, the entire European Union idea falls apart. And there have been some politicians coming out recently saying that they need to reverse, or they're going to reverse their immigration strategy in Europe. If other countries don't want to do it within the EU, then they may have to try to start a new project and the EU may fall apart. This is being openly discussed now.
So North Rhine-Westphalia has a population of 18 million and a reported 20,000 candidates will run for office in its September 14th local elections. The number of passings has nevertheless raised questions on social media. The state's Interior Ministry has pointed out that candidates from other parties, including the Greens and Social Democrats, have also passed
Okay, so
away.
you have 1 or 2 other candidates. You have 7 from one party that has been the ire of power in Germany. They do not want this party in power. They're openly trying to do everything they can to stop them from disbanding the party. And you have 7 candidates passing away on the eve of an election right after the mail-in ballots have kind of already been sent out.
And the AfD's co-leader, Alice Weidel, made no effort to quash speculation, reposting a claim by retired economist Stefan Homburg that the number of candidates passings was statistically almost impossible, even though other parts and other sectors of the AfD have come out to say that they don't see it as suspicious, or that it's just all happened at the same time.
And this could easily backfire on Germany and the EU. The problem is they have so much censorship laws that a lot of these articles and independent people that are actually reporting on this story won't get into the EU zeitgeist and the German voters themselves. So a lot of German people may not know this had happened. If they did know that this happened, I would expect an uprising and millions of people to really come out and vote and secure a win for the AfD. But with so much censorship in the EU, it's going to be very interesting how this election does turn out.
Mm-hmm. And we do have something about, I believe it's the UK. You grabbed this one as well.
Yeah, let's go right to this then.
From GBN, Epping residents vow to stop paying council tax bill after Court of Appeal overturns hotel closure.
Yeah, so they're trying to figure out ways they can peacefully protest, but really put pressure on the government, much like the Canadians did with the trucker protest. That was one of the most modern, peaceful protests in history. It was re-implemented all the way around the world. The English have come up with their own version, and this was the raise the flag. It's hard for the government of the UK to come out and say, you can't raise the English flag, you can't have national pride, it's racist. And tens of thousands of these flags are going all over Ireland and the UK. Now, on top of that, they're trying to really put pressure on the government by saying we're no longer going to pay our taxes. The UK government needs that money for these migrant hotels and other benefits that they're trying to give these migrants. So if if they're not able to collect the tax and they start having to arrest their own naturalized citizens because they can no longer fund the immigrants, it's going to be very interesting. I like what UK citizens and Irish citizens have been doing lately. They have been avoiding violence and figuring out very smart ways to gain global attention and bring attention to the migrant crisis in the UK. And
like with what was happening with horrible things that were happening to younger women and girls over in the UK when, for example, Elon Musk started making the world notice about it, and that's when the ball started to get rolling. Elon Musk, funnily enough, has also been involved in highlighting this situation, not just this one, but everything that's going on in the UK right now. And I think if it wasn't for that and for X, because of the censorship they have around any sort of media or any sort of bad information coming out from the UK, it wouldn't have come out otherwise. But furious Epping residents have declared that they will refuse to pay their council tax following Friday's Court of Appeal decision that reversed an injunction blocking asylum seekers from staying at a hotel in town. The ruling means 130...
So I also wanted to talk about this. The UK citizens felt like the government was actually listening to them, because hundreds of local councils were coming out and saying the migrants have to get out of the hotels. A court of appeals, most likely coming from the federal government, are saying that no, that ruling is not legitimate, that these migrants can stay in these hotels and they will not be exiting them from the country. That's why it's going to the next level, which is we're not going to pay our taxes.
Yeah, so it means 138 migrants can remain at the controversial Essex Hotel, overturning a high court order that would have required their removal by September 12.
And it's not just the Essex Hotel, that's just the one in the primary front. But that ruling, well, if it would have stood, then it would have emboldened a lot of other councils to kind of stand by their rulings. But this whole thing may crumble, and the next step may be that the citizens may have to refuse to pay taxes if they want their government to hear them.
Local residents expressed outrage at the decision, with some saying they would withhold council tax payments even if it resulted in imprisonment. The hotel has been at the center of intense controversy after an Ethiopian asylum seeker residing there was charged with essaying a 14-year-old girl last month, and he continues to deny the allegations.
Yeah, and you can naturally kind of see where this thing might go. The citizens don't want the migrants there. Now they're saying, get them out. The government is saying, no, we're not going to give them out. We're going to give them benefits on top of that, which you pay taxes for. The citizens are now saying, we're not going to pay our taxes. You can arrest us. I could see it going from here, the government saying, okay, we're going to arrest you. And then we're going to take the migrants out of the hotels and put them in your houses as we confiscate them because you're not paying taxes on your homes. I could see this going that way, but if it does, it's not going to play well on a global basis for the UK government. And that's why they want so much censorship right now. They don't want this stuff getting out. Mm-hmm. Okay, we can go to the next story if you want.
Sure.
And that's Marco Rubio.
Yes.
And I think this section is a lot of US politics and Trump. And then we actually have a lot of Canadian subjects after that. I kind of put them in those two categories.
But right now we're going to, we are in Mexico. And so is Marco Rubio, who says that the U.S. and Mexico will strengthen security collaboration. He met with President Claudia Sheinbaum today. He arrived in Mexico City, and I'm sure interesting discussions and also very different things that are being said from the Mexican government out publicly, and what the U.S. is saying was talked about, and also the agreements that were made.
I'm going to be interested to see how long he does stay. I think they're going to talk about a lot of different issues behind closed doors. That's not going to make it into the public eye, because what Sheinbaum says in public and what she does in private, she's in complete alignment with the U.S. government behind closed doors and how she is implementing policies, which I think will end up in a good trade deal. At least I hope it does for Mexico. She seems to be handling the situation very well. Also, the U.S. and Marco Rubio specifically is tip of the spear for putting a lot of pressure on Venezuela right now. They currently killed a bunch of traffickers coming out of Venezuela. Last time, at the end of the first Trump administration, they were able to put a ton of pressure on Venezuela and have secret negotiations that happened in Mexico City. If there are negotiations that will happen again, they'll most likely happen in neutral ground in Mexico City. Last time they almost negotiated a pardons for Maduro, his family, his generals, and any other political people that wanted immunity. It fell apart because Trump's term ended.
So Mexico and the United States on Wednesday agreed during U.S. Secretary of State's Marco Rubio's visit to keep collaborating on cross-border security, including fighting the movement of illicit substances, weapons, and fuel, but made clear it would be done from their respective sides of the border, respecting each other's sovereignty at the time of heightened concerns over U.S. intervention in the region.
Well, and it's very interesting what's happening, and you can see the level of cooperation just by where U.S. military personnel are placed. There's no longer an issue at the border because there's nobody coming across the border. They're fighting this battle within Mexico, and beyond Mexico, and they're stationing a lot of troops in waters just off the coast of Mexico, whether that's nuclear submarines, aircraft carriers, or thousands and thousands of troops ready to deploy into Venezuela or anywhere else they see fit. They're also launching drones. I'm sure they're mapping out the entire unpopulated regions of Mexico to kind of see where everything's kind of happening right now.
What had initially been advertised as a signing of a broad security agreement, but it evolved into a reaffirmation of the collaboration Mexico and the U.S. have said they've been doing all along. Their priorities remain stopping illicit substances from flowing into the U.S. and preventing high-powered arms being bought in the U.S. from shops there and smuggled into Mexico, while continuing to control migration, which has fallen dramatically. The new development was the establishment of a high-level implementation group for that continued collaboration.
Yeah, and I would be shocked if Mexico didn't come out with an amazing tariff deal with the level of cooperation they've actually provided. Another thing that they've provided to the U.S., it was talked about, and now I believe it's starting to be implemented, is Mexico will be tariffing China at the same rate the U.S. is. U.S. wanted Canada to do the same, and Canada has refused to this point. So the Trump administration was talking about making an impervious zone into the Americas, so that they can start manufacturing their own goods, whether that be high-tech goods, low-tech goods, which I think a lot of Mexican manufacturing, that's what's going to happen after this tariff deal is done. And a lot of the raw natural resources will come from Canada and Mexico.
But then also Mexico keeps emphasizing sovereignty and trying to say, we don't need the help, but thank you. Good ties during Rubio visit.
But she has to keep this persona on the surface because her administration is infiltrated by organized crime gangs, and there's just a lot of moving parts, and she could lose her head for a lot of this stuff. So on the surface, she says these things, but when she says these things, I'm pretty sure she's coordinating with the Trump administration and letting him know she's going to say these things, because the Trump administration has never really said much bad about her, and they never complain when she says these things. When the Canadian politicians, as soon as they say something, the Trump administration is all over them, but because they're doing it on their own.
But yes, so they visited, and the two countries vowed to work together against organized crime groups, several of which U.S. President Donald Trump's administration has designated as foreign, really bad people organizations, though Mexico reiterated that all operations must respect its sovereignty. And yet, I'm sure the help is being accepted mostly. Also because the Mexican government has worked in some ways to try to block news of when there are operations happening. They come out right away and say, yes, it was authorized, even though it is very clear. And from other reporting, it is very clear that even the Mexican government, in a lot of these cases, like with the drone overflying Valle de Bravo, were not fully aware that it was happening. And it was the citizenry and journalists that noticed the drone flying over and over again in circles. And then the security secretary came out to say, oh yeah, no, we knew. But it became obvious after that they don't know, but they're having to go along with it. So I think Mexico's cooperating a lot more than they're trying to even pretend to their own citizens.
Well, and this is not some half-hearted attempt to get rid of organized crime, not just in Mexico, but South America. They are full on actually doing it. The last time the United States tried to do something like this, they weren't really going to the sources and doing everything that needed to be done to do this. So it's going to be interesting how this escalates. A lot of the shipments of illegal goods is being shipped up to Canada and manufactured there and being brought across the border that way. And they're trying to cut it off there. They're cutting it off in Mexico. They're going after the border. They're going after Venezuela. They're going after other organizations in South America as well. They're upping the spending they're doing on military surveillance in all these other countries. They're really trying to secure the North American hemisphere for future manufacturing, future goods. They want to have a very powerful pole if it becomes a multipolar world. So they kind of need Canada, the United States, and Mexico to be the heart of that. They're going to have to break Canada, I think, before they're going to get any real cooperation.
But in the U.S. and with all of this cooperation happening between the U.S. and Mexico, and less people migrating to the U.S. just in general, From the AP, 1.2 million immigrants are gone from the U.S. labor force under Trump, preliminary data shows.
Yeah, and this is just the ones that they actually track and they know about. There's been a lot of self-deportations as well. So I would expect there to be 1.5 to 2 million. This is huge because they stopped the flow of immigrants coming through the southern border and mostly through the northern border. That means the number's not continuously going up as they're deporting these people. They're keeping it at around zero or very low while they deport people. That means they're going to a net negative of how many people are actually illegally migrating to the country, which this is the first time I've seen in my lifetime that something like this has kind of happened.
So...
And wages are starting to go up. A lot of manufacturing is starting to come back to the United States. There's becoming a lot of robotic manufacturing that humans are working alongside robots, like at auto plants and stuff like this. So the human jobs that are being created are very high, well-paying manufacturing jobs.
And as we see a lot with this article, so I'm not going to read the beginning of it. I just want the information. They start with a heartwarming and saddening story about an illegal migrant that's fearing for her life and for deportation, but not looking for that bit. I'm just looking for the numbers. Yeah, more than 1.2 million immigrants disappeared from the labor force from January through the end of July, according to preliminary Census Bureau data analyzed by Pew that includes people who are in the country illegally as well as legal residents. Immigrants make up almost 20% of the U.S. workforce, and that data shows 45% of workers in farming, fishing, and forestry are immigrants, according to Pew.
And you have to realize that this is all this happened in a 6-month period. Mm-hmm. So right now they're just gearing up and they've just got the financing through the big, beautiful bill for their law enforcement expansion to really go into other cities and safe haven cities. So I'd expect this number to go up over Trump's term. If we just go every 6 months, there's 1.2. That's about 2.5 million a year. That would make a total of 10 million illegal immigrants exited from the country at the end of Trump's term. There was approximately rumored to be 11 brought in under Biden. So that would be almost the entire amount exited, which would be good, which would be fairly good. And we would have to see who gets in after Trump. That's important because it's a total restructuring of the economy, not just the U.S. economy, but the global economy, how it works with tariffs, how it works with manufacturing, and how much these companies are going to have to pay their workers within the United States.
It says about 30% of all construction workers are immigrants and 24% of service workers are immigrants as well. And I would be very curious to know what the numbers of unemployment are now for U.S. citizens and how that has changed or will continue to change over time.
Yeah, unemployment's very low in the United States right now. It's very high in Canada, and Canada is continuing their large-scale immigration plot against their citizens. We're going to go into those articles a little bit later when we get to the Canadian section. Mm-hmm. Okay, we can go. You can go into the next story, and maybe the Space Force. And this was interesting as well. A lot of people might not know all the moving parts that are going on here.
I don't know much, so it'll be your story as well. From Reuters, Trump to move Space Command headquarters to Alabama from Colorado.
Yeah, a lot of the military headquarters are consolidated within Colorado, and a lot of the command structures within Colorado. I believe Colorado is a blue state, but what was talked about in order to kind of drain the swamp or get rid of the deep state is you can't just get rid of a lot of these organizations, but you do need to decentralize them away from Colorado and away from Washington, D.C., meaning you take the FBI headquarters out of DC and you put it in different states, preferably red states, and then you start taking the military command and putting them in different places. This also makes it so it's less decentralized. With centralization, it can become compromised, or a lot of the communications can work against the government that's in place. We've seen that during the first Trump administration. What kind of happened? They were able to freeze them out.
More decentralized.
Yeah.
Okay. U.S. President Donald Trump.
Well, also for funding and jobs. Each of these organizations, like the Space Force or the FBI, if you put them in different states, it really spreads out the jobs, the wealth of government spending and stuff like this, and the contracts as well that go along with these kind of headquarters.
So, US President Donald Trump said on Tuesday he will relocate the US Space Command headquarters from Colorado to Alabama, noting the southern state's strong support for him while criticizing Colorado's voting practices. The move, first reported by Reuters, benefits a state that overwhelmingly supported Trump's 3 Republican presidential bids at the expense of one that opposed them. We love Alabama. I only won it by about 47 points. I don't think that influenced my decision, though, he said.
Yeah. Okay, so I just wanted to bring that up, and the decentralization of a lot of these different three-letter agencies, military organizations, being placed somewhere else other than Washington, D.C. or Colorado. This is extremely important in the dismantling of the deep state.
And that is why we also see a lot of people protesting and not wanting that to happen. We did just see a massive exit from the CDC and from HHS because of RFK Jr.
And they have 1,000 signatures. They want RFK gone. A lot of these pharmaceutical companies have open emails and letters that are currently being released that they want RFK gone, and they are lobbying to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars right now to try to get him gone. They now know the threat that he is, and he is doing a great job, so keep it up, RFK.
And despite all of these attacks and all of these people saying, oh, this is a terrible idea, etc., for example, with the DC thing, which, yes, we don't fully agree with, but we also see a lot of people reversing course. And maybe if they sat down for 2 more seconds to think about why decentralizing some of these big, giant agencies would actually give them less and less power as a whole, maybe they change their tune.
Especially the FBI. The majority of the people work for the FBI are stationed in DC. You want these people spread out amongst the entire country, how it used to be when the FBI was actually founded, and it was actually boots on the ground. Mm-hmm. The other thing I was going to say about RFK, and they're doing this very smart by placing these headquarters in other locations other than DC and Colorado. But with the HHS specifically, he put forth 181 studies, I believe, showing the negative effects of the COVID vaccine and other vaccines, which is going to make this a permanent change. So it's hard to bring a lot of these vaccines back in. He also took off immunity for doctors and nurses. So if doctors and nurses give information about these vaccines and then give the vaccine to the patient, they're going to be legally liable. Now, the vaccine companies themselves already have legal immunity, so they had to do something else. The only way around it was to make the doctors liable for any permanent injuries or deaths, which is good. I don't think a lot of doctors are going to actually give these vaccines out now if they're responsible for it, or the jibby jabs, I mean to say.
Sorry, YouTube, you said that word.
That's all right. You don't apologize.
No, I'm apologizing.
It's already
to the
done.
Censors.
Yeah, it's already done. They're not going to uncensor
And now
me.
another story where I can't really say it fully, but Justin wannabe Trump ender Ryan Ruth is now in his final pre-trial hearing after firing his public defenders. The DOJ introduced classified evidence against Ruth, which the judge said could cause exceptionally grave damages to the national security of the U.S., so she blocked its release.
There was a lot of strings that possibly tie him, in my opinion, possibly to Ukraine, or definitely to Ukraine, other 3-letter organizations, and it's very interesting. Him as the specific subject, because there was 2 potential assassins that came out. He was one of them. This is the much more interesting character, and looks like he possibly has government connections. So,
You want to see it?
yeah, I would like to see it, and that's why they're.
No, I do want to see the video.
Yeah, but this is why they're classifying a lot of this information, because it probably ties back to the U.S. government or the Ukrainian government.
If you hear that, sorry.
Okay, let's
There
go
it
with it.
left.
Fox News alert now. Ryan Ruth, the man accused of attempting to assassinate the president last year, is in court right now in Florida. It's his final pretrial hearing before jury selection next week, and he is apparently representing himself today. Ruth is facing 5 federal charges, including attempted assassination of a major presidential candidate and a slew of weapons charges. His criminal defense attorney, here's criminal defense attorney Donna Rotuno.
And pause it.
Given the fact that he...
And this is going to be interesting, because he wants to be his own lawyer, and they were probably trying to limit his legal defenses that he's able to actually present, because it has a lot of sensitive information. I'm thinking he's thinking if he's his own lawyer, he's more likely to be able to present this stuff. I don't know if that's going to be the case. He's sitting in jail and he's looking at a life sentence or possibly even worse. So it'll be interesting to see the connections he actually had. I would be willing to even let him go if he's willing to reveal who was actually pulling the strings behind him. I'm suspecting a lot of NGO money.
He has this long, extensive history, a mental health history. I am quite surprised that there have been no requests here to determine his fitness to stand trial, because I think if there's ever an issue coming back in an appeals court, that may be something that is risen. And I'm surprised that the public defenders that were originally assigned to this case did not raise that issue.
So our Dana Marie McNichol is live in Fort Pierce, just outside the federal courthouse now. Dana Marie, what's the latest?
Hi, Aisha. Well, Ryan Ruth, as you just mentioned, is in court right now for that last hearing. He will be taking center stage after firing those public defenders last month. So here's what we could expect for the beginning of next week's trial. Ryan Ruth will be in business attire after Federal Judge Eileen Cannon ordered the shackles be removed. Prosecutors raised concerns that he might wear political clothing. Ruth is expected to face challenges as his trial moves forward. Judge Cannon has ruled that Ruth cannot access any classified information, citing risks to U.S. national security. Although Ruth dismissed his public defenders, Judge Cannon is requiring the attorneys to remain on standby for Ruth to help with any legal advice when needed.
Okay, and this is the thing. They want to make him look crazy. He doesn't want to plead insanity, because if he makes some serious accusations at the Democratic Party, the U.S. government, the Ukrainian government, he doesn't want to be viewed as a lunatic. That being said, they're not letting him access classified information, so he has no way to prove this through these classified documents other than his word. If they can discredit him by making him look crazy and it's just his word, because the judge isn't even allowing him access that could potentially prove who was actually behind this. This more than any other assassin, this looks like it ties back to the U.S. government or another government. Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting trial. It's going to be interesting if he even makes it to trial.
And he wants to, again, self-represent, which is insane.
And if he does wear political clothing, he only needs one person on the jury to sympathize. And we know a lot of Democrats do sympathize with his actions. So,
and if convicted, he does face a maximum sentence of life in prison. Unless they can appeal through the insanity.
And we can go to the article if you want.
That was the article.
Oh, that was the article.
Yeah,
Okay.
It didn't say much other than what we just saw.
Okay, it's just interesting that they have classified information. They're not. They didn't allow his attorney to get. They're not allowing him to get. He knows if he had ties to the CI or the three-letter agencies, and he knows there's likely to be a paper trail. He knows likely where to ask for that paper trail. Through freedom of information and through different legal proceedings, but they're not allowing him to even look at that stuff. How is he supposed to mount a defense? Now, not that I'm sympathizing with him, but I don't think he acted on his own. And
that's the thing.
And I want the people that are behind this way more than I would like to see him go to justice.
And it is treading on the tail of what also happened with Epstein, for example, where it's not that you're sympathizing with the person, but it's like, it's very clear there's something else going on, and that the cover-up is becoming a lot, like, too obvious.
Yeah.
Especially because why would he fire his own defense team? I mean, yes, he might have issues in the head, but at the same time, what are they trying to cover up by having him not even be able to access what could help him defend himself?
My suspicion is he's telling his defense team, these are the people we're talking to. These were the people that maybe told me to do it or encouraged me to do it. I want you to mount this defense. The attorney probably said he does not. Sometimes in court, they can take certain legal defenses away from attorneys. So the attorney may be saying, we can't use that defense. He might have said, well, get these files. And then the attorney says, I don't have access to those files. So maybe he fired them. And now he's realizing they're not even giving him access to the files. So.
And still in crazy US, but now Chicago, from Eric Doherty. Chicago Mayor Brendan Johnson says Chicago crime problem is due to red states, not the criminals in Chicago.
And we'll see this. I think we have an article to go along with this one. So
Maybe.
And this is, I kind of brought this up because this is another one of those 80-20 issues. Even though I'm not in favor of bringing the military into these cities, I think they should just finance the police. But a lot of these police departments don't want to do their job. So maybe it's a catch-22. Trump knows this issue. And this issue is Democrat mayors are screaming about guns, guns, guns. And that these are coming from red states and they want to take the, if they take the right for gun ownership away from the citizens, then there will be no more crime. But that's not the case. With Trump in power, Democrats want guns now. When Trump's not in power and the Democrats are in power, conservatives want their guns. So this becomes an 80-20 issue when you start talking about this.
And this guy has also, the mayor, has been making a huge hubbub about this for a while now.
In the state of Illinois, these guns come from red states. They are coming from Indiana. They are coming from Mississippi. They are coming from Louisiana.
And pause it. Yeah, and if you take all the guns away from all the citizens, the criminals are still going to have guns because they're going to have legal guns, and then the citizens have no way to defend themselves. And now you don't, on top of that, you want to take away the citizens' natural right to defend themselves. And then after you disarm the citizens, you don't want the military to be brought in to protect them either. I may be against the military coming in, and I would rather see the police force funded in the proper way. But the best self-defense is actually to allow your law-abiding citizens to have a way to defend themselves.
But at the same time, yes, the guns are coming from there, but who's shooting them and where are they doing so? Not over there, but in Chicago.
Is the harsh reality, whether Republicans like it or not. Occupying our city will do nothing to solve this problem. No matter how much in the state of Illinois.
And the thing is, as much as I am against bringing the military in there, because I don't want to see a consolidation in power and a federal police force be permanently implemented, especially when Trump's out of office. If a Democrat somehow gets back in there, Trump has already consolidated the power for them, and who knows where they're going to point that weapon or that consolidation of power.
But at the same time, it is very clear that, for example, in DC, it did work.
1 second. He says it's going to do nothing by bringing the military in, but it's going to clean up the city. Mm-hmm. It cleaned it up overnight when they brought the military into Washington, D.C.
And it would also, I mean, I guess unfortunately for them, but it might also pinpoint and help pinpoint who are the ones that are doing all the crime. And once that information starts coming out and once the statistics start coming out, it doesn't benefit the Democratic Party or all their talking points that they've been putting out for the past 10 years, especially during the BLM era. It's now going to benefit them to know who the criminals are and even have them maybe go to prison or at least become part of a statistic, because then it completely fumbles their numbers and their whole narrative as well.
Well, and on top of that, I think this is a really strategic play. He cleaned up Washington, D.C. He's now going after Chicago. A lot of citizens, the death rates and gun violence on the weekends alone are astronomical in Chicago. So a lot of citizens are actually asking for the military to come in. But then he's going to go to maybe Detroit, another city, and then he's going to go to L.A. I think L.A. was the target all along, and he may want a permanent federalized police force in there to deal with the cartels on the U.S. side of the border, because I think that's their home base. And I think that's part of the bigger strategy. He doesn't want to go directly to LA, because if he does, there's going to be massive pushback within different dark money and NGOs funding protests. The protests are going to get violent. It's going to be military against citizens. But if he can go into DC, if he can go into Detroit, if he can go into Chicago and completely clean up these places, he can justify it for LA, even if there are protests.
And I do think in LA it will be completely different. Number one, who they're targeting and who they're getting. But number two, the narrative that might go around it as well.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, more and more stories are coming out about something that most people, I guess, in LA and in Mexico probably as well already knew. But a lot of these criminal organizations that have set up camp up there and become, part of the community have also started hiring child soldiers. And there are child soldiers in LA, unfortunately, but most people don't even know about it. And the people that keep protesting and continue trying to say no to ICE, no to everything, are just helping perpetuate that whole thing. And this would make it even more obvious as well. Same as with the statistics that are not beneficial to the Democrats in Chicago. It would not be beneficial to see or to know when these people came in, when they set up camp, and how big the camp they've set up now is.
Yeah, I mean, he's going after Venezuela. He's probably going to go after LA. He's going after the target within Mexico. He's going after Canada, where they've kind of set up shop. He's trying to whack-a-mole at every stage, and he's setting up a permanent resistance here. It's going to be interesting if he is able to stop this, and there is a good possibility with this bold strategy, or very, wide strategy here, that it might actually work.
But as we continue to say, and as I have said in Spanish multiple times and here as well, when you go after these kinds of organizations, especially in Mexico, we have seen it before with the war on the cartels that Felipe Calderon had a few years ago, and it did not turn out good for him. It just exacerbated the problem. And that is one other thing to consider, not just cheering on for this to continue to happen in a unmeasured way. But
I'm expecting them to go after an easier target, especially if they put up a long-term resistance and somebody gets in after Trump that has a similar strategy. Who's going to be the easiest target that has actually has money to spend on illegal substances? It's going to be Europe. Europe is falling apart. Europe has all these extremely progressive policies that actually facilitate the cartels and organized crime. So,
I mean, and China in a way as well.
China won't.
No, but I mean, they also are have to do with this, but nobody talks about it.
Okay.
So Trump says he's sending National Guard to Chicago as city braces for immigration crackdown. So there is a bit more to the story. President said Tuesday that he will send in the National Guard to help fight crime in Chicago as the city braces for the administration's planned immigration crackdown in the area. Well, we're going in. I didn't say when. We're going in. When you lose, look, I have an obligation. This isn't a political thing. I have an obligation, he said. At a mid-afternoon conference with the mayor, they said they didn't want it. The naval station has been preparing to be the base of operations for more U.S. immigration and customs enforcement agents. Homeland Security Kristi Noem confirmed plans for ramped-up immigration enforcement in Illinois over the weekend, but did not share specific details.
Yeah, so he has to go into these cities that have high crime rates because he wants to declare it a national emergency. That's why he's going into Chicago, and we'll see what happens from here. But what's the next?
Speaking of China, maybe that's why I brought it up. From PBS News, a Chinese mining company is accused of covering up the extent of a major toxic spill in Zambia. Is anybody surprised? No. No, I don't want to donate. Go away. A Chinese-owned Chinese-owned mining company, probably also for military purposes, has been accused of covering up the extent of a disastrous toxic spill in Zambia that polluted a major river that millions rely on with cyanide and arsenic. The spill happened in February when part of a dam that held waterways from the Sino Metals leach Zambia copper mine collapsed, allowing it to flow into the Kafu River that runs through the heart of Zambia. Sino Metals leach Zambia.
And a lot of people may not know, China, I used to work in mining, but China owns a lot of the mining. 70% of mining headquarters used to be based out of Canada. I think it's still a very high percentage. China owns a lot of those companies, actually almost all those companies, but they keep them as Canadian fronts, so people don't suspect that the majority of the world's mine is actually owned by China through third-party companies. So
this one is a subsidiary of the state-run China Non-Ferrous Metal Mining Group. An environmental cleanup company says that it was contracted by them to investigate the incident. It said its 2-month investigation found that the disaster resulted in the release of 1.5 million tons of toxic material, at least 30 times more than what they had admitted at the time. The South Africa-based environmental company Drizzt said it submitted preliminary reports to Sino Metals indicating the severity of the pollution, but the company then terminated its contract 1 day before the final report was due. Sino Metals said in a statement to the AP that it terminated the contract because of contractual breaches by Drizzt and the Zambian government.
And this is the thing, like that river is supplying millions of people with water. And yeah, it's important to have business within your country, but drinking water, especially for poorer countries, is extremely important. So bad to see things like that when they do happen.
And I mean, but are we surprised that it's China and that they were trying to cover it up? No. How many more times has it happened, and has it actually been
okay,
covered
but
up?
it's not so much. Yeah, it's China. I understand you're going to say China, China, China because you hate China. That being said, it's up to these countries that allow these mining companies to come in to at least have a baseline of laws, because the Chinese government is usually working through Canadian companies. Those companies will follow the law to the T, but they won't go above and beyond that. So a lot of these African countries just want the business. They need to start implementing legislation and things that make sure it protects their environment, because the environment in these poor rural communities is more important than first world countries by a long shot. So within Canada, when I used to do mining, the legislation it's overly legislated, so it's hard to be profitable with a lot of mining. But there is a nice sweet spot where it's not overly regulated, but it's not under regulated as well. So a lot of these countries need to wake up, and they need to have mining regulations if they're going to allow these mining companies in.
The problem is a lot of these mining deposits or places where it can be mined, the governments are going to be pretty corrupt. So asking that of them is also a lot.
Well, the mining companies themselves are going to look for countries that don't have any regulations. They don't want to mine in Canada because it's overly regulated. They would prefer to spend more money but not have to deal with any kind of regulations or cleanup.
But so yes, the Drizzt claims the toxic spill was much worse than.
We can continue to go. That was good for that. We got quite a few stories today.
He just doesn't want me to talk bad about China.
I don't care.
Even though it's what I do best.
I don't care, but it is the responsibility of a lot of these other countries as well.
It is. But again, asking that of those countries because of they're being selectively targeted by China, and mostly just China, because of the lower regulations and the necessity and the need that the country itself has for China to come in and start doing their own thing.
Yeah.
So they just open the doors wide open. But Canada, speaking of China, another place conquered by China, Canada enters recession as exports plunge 27% and business investment collapses 10%. Canadians just aren't putting their elbows up high enough.
And this is a fairly long clip, but he put it so perfectly with his economic analysis in a lot of different sectors. So we're going to probably watch the whole thing. If you can, we'll play it at maybe 1.5 speed. But we have a ton of Canadian stories coming up. So I just want people to realize the state of the Canadian economy right now. I know I talk about it a lot, but sometimes it's nice if we have somebody that puts it very clearly with statistics.
This was from Ryan Girdison, the tweet, the X, whatever you want to call it.
Canada is on the edge of recession as exports crash, while their new globalist prime minister looks for new fights to pick with Donald Trump so it crashes harder. The numbers come from Stats Canada, who reports the economy contracted by an annualized 1.6% last quarter, driven by an annualized 27% drop in exports. Business investment fell an annualized 10.1%. Last one out, turn off the lights. The one growth area was government spending, which soared 5% while the economy shrank. Bureaucrats recession-proof since 1867. The news sent the Canadian dollar, the loonie, tumbling to just 72 cents. In 2012, the Canadian dollar was worth more than the US dollar. It's already carnage up north after a decade of Justin Trudeau and Canada's new World Economic Forum approved Prime Minister Mark Carney. Carnage, they call him. In short, wages are West Virginia while housing costs are Los Angeles. According to the OECD, disposable income in Canada was left after taxes is just 57% what it is in the US. In 2010, Canada was richer than the US. This is partly falling wages. Canada has 4 times the level of migration of the US, and partly because...
And you have to realize, before the Liberals took over in Canada, because they've been in power for over a decade now, the economy was left as strong, if not stronger, in a lot of areas than the U.S., which was the strongest economy in the world at the time.
Well, I remember when I first arrived to Canada, the comparison and trying to do the conversion between U.S. dollars, which is kind of what helped me go back to Mexican pesos eventually and figure out what things cost. For a long time after, my brain was still thinking the Canadian dollar was stronger than the US dollar, and things just didn't make sense once I started paying for them. And then eventually I realized the Canadian dollar lost a lot.
Canadian taxes are nearly twice the level in the US. Meanwhile, according to Royal Bank of Canada, housing costs, mortgage, property tax, utilities, eats up more than half of disposable income in Canada. The US, it's closer to a third. Incidentally, according to RBC, in Toronto, it costs 77% of disposable income for the median household on housing costs. In Vancouver, it's 98.6%, not a joke. Unsurprisingly, 70% of Canadians now say owning a house is, quote, impossible. Unemployment in Canada is almost 7%. In the US, it's 4.2%. Canadian youth employment is 14.6%, which is Great Depression levels. Last month alone, Canada lost 41,000 jobs. That's almost 400,000 in U.S. terms. And even when they can get a job, Canadian wages are flat since 2016, while growth has fallen off a cliff, with Canada turning in the lowest growth out of 50 developed countries since COVID, with productivity dropping in 15 of the last 17 quarters. Business insolvencies are at a 15-year high, also the highest since the 2008 crisis. Finally, the last man standing debt. Canada's household debt is the highest in the G7. It's nearly 2.5 times U.S. levels relative to disposable income. Put it all together, according to Stats Canada, 40% of middle-class Canadians are living hand-to-mouth, 25% now live in, quote, material deprivation, including 42% of renters and 45% of single-parent families, of which there are many since Canada's marriage rate has collapsed to just half that of the U.S. Less marriage means less kids. Canada's fertility rate is now 1.1 per woman, so every generation drops in half. That also means for every new Canadian, births minus deaths, there are 28 new migrants. Population replacement, turbo speed. So it's next brought to you by I Trust Capital. Canada is a resource superpower, from oil and natural gas to wheat and hydro, with a tiny population. By all rights, it should be Saudi Arabia, where they don't pay any taxes. Unfortunately, the government fails to exploit these for green reasons, and unfortunately, there's no relief in sight for the mass migration or the crashing exports. The migrants, because they are the replacement voters for the Liberals, and the exports, because instead of cutting deals to preserve millions of jobs, Carney is picking fights with Trump from censorship to Gaza, while floating goofy fantasies like replacing American exports with the EU, which would take decades if it happened. It could be a long 4 years in Canada. Hey, we'll be watching. See you.
And yeah, he just put it so perfectly there. And we had to play it at 1.5 speed because it was a 4-minute clip, but he put it perfectly.
Oh, and his name is Peter St. Ong. I just wanted to.
And let's get into the Canadian articles now. And I just want to put that in the pre-context. He went over everything that's falling apart in Canada, and it's only just beginning. Over the last decade, they've had virtually no growth or very, very little. Now that it's starting to collapse and go into a negative. You will own nothing and you will be happy is where Canada is headed. And it looks like they're going there pedal to the metal.
Do you want to go into the Juno News thing? Because that's what you had after this.
Yeah, let's go. They're also censoring journalists within Canada. This was part of the reason we left. A lot of journalists could face 20 to 25 years in jail if new legislation is passed. That legislation had previously been put up, and I said, maybe it's time for us to leave the country.
So this is Cian Bexley, who is being criminally investigated by the Carney government and threatened with 5 years in prison for reporting news that embarrassed the Liberal Party of Canada during a Democratic election.
And Cian Bexley used to report for True North News. He now made his own news organization called Juno News. It's huge. It's huge independent media. They're going after him because one of the Liberal candidates had to withdraw from the election based upon his reporting. And he says it was the most fact-checked story that he had ever done. So let's get into this.
What are you doing? Wait, I don't have my headphones. Wait, do you want me to play it at 1.5? Because it's 4 minutes.
Yeah. I don't know if we'll go through the whole thing, but we'll get the gist of it here.
Okay, hold on then.
I am being criminally investigated. I just received the letter from the government, from the Office of Canada's Election Commissioner, informing me that I'm being investigated for my reporting during Canada's 45th general election. The stories in question detail the alleged history of Thomas Keeper, someone you probably know of by now. He's the now fired Liberal candidate for Calgary Confederation. Juno News worked diligently to ensure the accuracy of what we published, and nothing then or now undermines its truth. We went above and beyond to ensure that we were reporting facts that were in the public interest. We not only gave the Liberal candidate, Thomas Keeper, chance after chance to answer very troubling allegations, he refused. I even hand-delivered an envelope with our questions to his office, and instead of responding, he called the police on me and lied, accusing me of assault. Now, the entire encounter was recorded, caught on camera, and the video makes it abundantly clear that his allegation was false, and within hours of our publication, what do you know, the Liberal Party fired him. Some conservatives wish that we had waited, that our newsroom had held the story until after the nomination, so that Keeper would be stuck on the ballot after the nomination deadline, and it would secure the seat for conservatives. But journalism is not about party strategy, it's about informing the public, during an election no less, and that's what we did. Now Mark Carney, he's furious, and he's using an authoritarian law implemented by Justin Trudeau to investigate me for the crime of reporting news that humiliated the Liberal Party of Canada. In Iran, I'd be executed for embarrassing the regime. In North Korea, I'd be sent to a labor camp. In China, I'd be carted off to some off-the-book black site and never heard from again. And in Canada, I'm threatened with up to 5 years in federal prison and a devastating $50,000 fine. I don't know how long this fight will last, or if I'll be in prison by this time next year, but I do know this. If it goes to trial, I will take it to the Supreme Court of Canada. And those justices, 6 of 9, who were appointed by Justin Trudeau, will be forced to declare once and for all whether freedom of the press still exists in this country. A more complete picture of this investigation, including the commissioner's letter that I just read, will be published at defendjuno.com.
Okay.
You can read it for
That's pretty good.
And we do have it.
And they have
We do
kept
have it here.
And they have kept the story up because it is completely fact checked. Everything seems to be completely true. They're not taking down the story. What the story involves was sexual harassment and different allegations against women. So, and this came from personal friends that grew up with him. So it's interesting.
Yeah, so Ottawa targets Juno News criminal probe into their report on Liberal candidate facing a potential criminal charge under a contested election speech law after their investigation into Liberal candidate, and they're calling to fortify the news.
And there is talk because Carney's poll numbers are still very high, the highest in Canadian history, even though he is completely dismantling that country. Because his poll numbers are high, there's talk about a possible snap election in December called by Carney because he wants to get a majority government. I don't know. I don't think he will call that election because Pierre Poilievre is back now. But that being said, he wants to set an example with this journalist because if that election comes, he doesn't want any negative press on him or anybody around him.
And also because the Liberals were not able to set the example they were trying to set with Rebel News when they were trying to leave them out of the debates and censor and cancel a lot of their reports as well. But for some reason, like magic worked and they were able to get in and they were able to win that case. But in a lot of cases, that's not the way it works. So allegations about Liberal candidate Thomas Keeper, and after the Liberal Party dropped him from the ballot, Ottawa moved to use Section 91(1) of the Canada Elections Act against Juno News, a law that Elections Canada's own former chief electoral officer recommended repealing for being vague and chilling to political speech. The Ontario courts even ruled the law was unconstitutional, but Ottawa is still pressing ahead with a criminal investigation against Kim XC.
Yeah, and it's good that independent media in Canada is so aware of this because they've been gone after by the Canadian government for so long. So they do know how to crowdfund lawyers for this. They do have normal legal teams for this kind of stuff. But the government's really trying to go after the big independent journalists to send a message to all the smaller independent journalists within Canada. So
they published interviews with 8 people who knew Keeper, and they sought comment repeatedly from Keeper and the Liberal Party, but they didn't. And then the Liberals dropped Keeper. But this is a law that they're trying to use. Section 91(1) is a speech offense about false statements relating to a candidate's character, requiring proof of knowing falsity and intent to affect the election. It's been condemned as unclear, ripe for misuse, and unnecessary because defamation law already exists, and they're weaponizing it specifically for this.
And on top of that, the person that these allegations were made of did not try to press defamation charges, or he never even disputed these charges because they most likely are true.
Yeah, he just sent the police after him when he was trying to interview him. But yes, press freedom, source protection, and democracy is what is at stake and what has been at stake in Canada for a very long time now. But speaking of crazy Canada.
Oh, this was a good one. This was big old fat Doug Ford. And if you don't know Doug Ford, his brother, what was his brother's name?
Rob Ford.
Oh, Rob Ford was a crackhead, and all this came out in spectacular fashion in
and then he
Canada.
Passed away.
Yeah, and now Doug Ford is the one trying to take over the reins here.
Yes. So we reported a story. When was it? A few days ago. That Crown Royal, which is a Canadian corporation, about its whiskey. What is it? A whiskey corporation is going to move a lot of its production to the U.S. because they can't continue to operate in Canada.
No, that's not true.
Okay, then you say it.
Crown Royal, which is a whiskey company in Canada, is going to move some of their bottling facilities to the U.S. for the Crown Royal that's going to be sold in the U.S. They're going to keep their manufacturing plants within Canada for the whiskey that's going to be sold within Canada, which I had recommended a lot of other companies do, have regional manufacturing facilities in different countries to avoid any kind of tariffs or backlash from the government. Seems like the Canadian government doesn't like that at all, though. If they keep this up, they're going to have Crown Royal move all of their production out of Canada.
And now Doug Ford is acting like a petulant child.
So this is what I think about Crown Royal. That's what they could do. But I think everyone else.
and there's a little pour spout on there he forgot to take off, so he's not able to dump this bottle in a proper fashion. And by the time this clip ends, the bottle's still more than halfway full.
Should do the same thing. Supporting companies that make whiskey here by Ontario people. That's what we need to do, is support each other.
It's gonna
You
smell
know, so I'm
so.
gonna make this even come out quicker. It's not coming in.
Was it?
I know there
I mean, he should know. His brother was an expert at that.
You can't even pour out a bottle of booze. How are you going to fix Canada?
Mm-hmm.
Barry wants to lie on the floor right now. No. I wish I could get the sun coming out quicker, but I'll stand here until
He's just incompetent.
Thank you. My brothers and sisters and you over on Crown Royal, I got your back. We're going to be there to help you. And by the way, I'm going to send you the team bill to Crown Royal too. Anyways, folks, that's it. It's only take a little while.
Yeah, so you have a Canadian company based in Canada trying to avoid the tariffs, so they're going to move some of their bottling facilities to the U.S. so they can sell the whiskey they want in the U.S. bottled in the U.S., but the stuff in Canada is still going to be bottled in Canada. If you continue to treat this company like this, they will leave Canada, and other companies will follow them.
Mm-hmm. Apparently,
there is no reason to do this to this company.
Apparently, Doug Ford is also now vowing to hurt Diageo, who is the owner of Crown Royal, for plant closure.
How are you going to hurt them? They have more power over you than you do over them.
Yeah, they actually do produce a lot of well-known spirits and liquors and alcohol. Yeah. Do you want me to read into this or no?
You can read a little bit. And wait, when we reported on the story first, the headline had read Crown Royal leaves Canada. And then by the time we went on air that day, it had changed. The Crown Royal is moving one bottling facility to the U.S. So maybe Doug Ford read the headline, didn't read the article, and then decided to have a press conference.
I mean, wouldn't surprise me. But Ontario Premier Doug Ford dumped a bottle of Crown Royal whiskey on the ground around his podium during an during an announcement in Kitchener Tuesday in response to parent company Diageo's announcement last week that it will close its Amherstburg, Ontario bottling plant. This is what I think about Crown Royal. That's what they can do. And then he started trying to pour it.
Okay, and then they've created monopolies in Canada that only the government controls, such as the LCBO, which is the Liquor Board of Canada. So they buy all this alcohol, tax it to hell, and then this stuff is manufactured in Canada. You pay triple the rate in Canada than you do in the US or Mexico because of the amount of taxes they put on it. But now they're threatening to pull the stuff from the shelves, possibly.
And neither you nor I drink. But in BC, for example, you can only purchase alcohol at liquor stores. You have to specifically go. And I think that's not an experience most people have in most states or even in Mexico. Usually you can go to the grocery store or like the 7-Eleven and you can purchase alcohol there. But in British Columbia, at least, you have to go to the liquor store. And it's most of them are state-owned liquor stores.
Yeah. Okay, let's go into the next article. What do we got? I think we only got a few left here. Why don't we go over to RUMBLE? That's the Green Monster to kind of finish this thing off.
Sure.
Okay.
So we'll see you over there. Same channel name. You can find us there. And see you in a second.
Oops.
Oh, we forgot to say like and subscribe. Can you hold down?